Right, we're good to go. We'll start with a karakia, and since I haven't organised anyone else this morning, I'll do that. So, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora. Right, welcome everyone to the meeting this morning for the Sustainability and Community Resilience Committee. We have some apologies on the screen there for various people for leaving early and several for late. Do I have a mover for those? Tim? Oh.
Excuse me, could you add me for
early departure and Councillor Major? That's a different meeting. Yeah. Okay, do I have a move for those? Tim was moving those. Do I have a seconder? Andrew, thank you very much. All in favour?
Aye.
Any against? Carried, thank you. And now we have a declarations of interest. Anyone today? Shouldn't be much in there. If anything does come up through the PX item, then let us know then. Public forum, there is none. Deputations by appointment, we've got Simon Britton on behalf of Think Papanui regarding item 8, the Residents Forum. Welcome, Simon. Thanks for coming in today and engaging with us.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou, kia ora to the Chair, Councillors and Mayor. I'm speaking today in my capacity as someone who volunteers their own time and some of their own money to encourage community engagement with Council. So for some context on that, and then I'll speak to the agenda item 8. So 4 years ago I started an initiative called Think Papanui, and it had the specific purpose of supporting community engagement with local government. My motivation for that was an observation that a lot of people I spoke to in the community couldn't really connect their lives and their own priorities with council and community board activities. And I'm sure there's a range of reasons for that, including how easy people found information to access on, for example, reports, agendas, minutes, information on projects in action and so on. And of course we're all busy and we've all got our own priorities and motivations and interests. So I established Think Papanui really as a local, hyper-local news and community engagement initiative. The specific motivations around engaging people with and keeping people informed with what was happening in the local area in the Papanui ward. And I've been doing that for 4 years now. It's established a reasonable reach in the local community. I get a lot of engagement, particularly on local news stories, and if people come for the news and stay for the information about local government, that works fine for me. So I'm really supportive of today's proposal for a residents' forum. I note the results from the council survey of residents, and my take on that is that if council continues doing what it's always done, then the risk is it's going to keep getting what it has been getting. We're not going to find a solution by continuing to do the same things. And I was particularly motivated to put my hand up and come and speak this morning, actually looking at the response on social media to the council's Facebook post and the Newsline item about the Residents Forum, and there seemed to be a reasonably negative and critical response, and a fair bit of why bother, you never listen, and a side dish of why don't you fix the roads in the east. And I thought that actually, in its own slightly ironic way, was an endorsement for the initiative. And the other comment I'd make on that is, while it's great to get feedback on social media, that feedback is not representative, or certainly doesn't come from a completely representative of our community. So it's good to take it and keep that in its place, but also to take feedback in other ways as well. I don't think there's any single tool or lever to pull to address community concerns and the cynicism, I think was the word I read, around council. I don't think what I'm doing with Think Papanui is the answer. I believe it helps and makes a contribution. And likewise, I think the Residents' Forum will help and make a contribution as well. By definition, the objective here is to reach people who are hard to reach or who don't engage, and of course that's going to be hard. And what I do see in the proposal is a design approach or user-centred design, which is really all about a collaborative, low-cost, short turnaround kind of approach of starting out just by reaching the people that you want to connect with or assist and ask those questions, ask why. So I would ask the committee to support the proposal today. I'd really look to seeing what comes from it. I'll be keen to contribute from my own perspective to that as well. And finally, too, I'll just repeat an offer I've made before, coming back to Think Papanui to close. If there are passionate people or groups in other parts of the city who are interested in doing something similar, I'm happy to share my experience, and I'll input into other areas for free with that. Kia ora.
Thanks, Simon. You'll leave time for questions. Tim? Oh, then Leanne.
Thank you, Simon. I guess one of the things, if we look at approaching people or groups that, say, are disgruntled with our consultation or our engagement, would that be a good way to go forward? Because you're saying, you mentioned that if we do the same old thing, we're not going to achieve, we're just going to achieve what we're achieving already. But you also mentioned about people found it hard to find documents and information, etc., on our websites, etc. So the two questions are, one, should we approach and make it specifically about those groups that feel disengaged because they've been in the process and it hasn't worked for them for whatever reason? And the other one is, because a lot of our documents are technical documents, should we do some kind of summary that breaks it down into layman's terms?
On the first question, I think Council hears from plenty of people who are disgruntled, so they're not necessarily the same group as the hard to reach. So I'd just be a little bit wary around that. But yes, you need to hear from people with all kinds of views of council, including disinterest as well as kind of passionate disgruntlement or passionate support. In terms of making information available, I think there's more that could be done. I particularly think there's more that can be done around celebrating success and highlighting, for example, I read in a staff report to council or to a committee or community board, here's what's changed as a result of consultation. I see that coming through quite a lot. I don't always see that kind of being surfaced in comms to the community, and I think that's a really key one. That would be some feedback from me to councils. It's really important to highlight changes that are made and what council does with feedback that it receives.
Thank you. Leanne?
I really like the, definition of madness, that keep doing the same thing over and over again, expect a different result. So I think what I like about the proposal is that it asks us to engage with a range of communities, because our city is quite diverse, and obviously there's the peninsula as well as the city. There are different interests, and as you say, different groups that are hard to reach. So inviting those hard to reach people to come and engage with us about how they'd like to be engaged seems to me that that's the purpose of this. It's not really the next step about the detailed consultation about specific issues. It's actually about helping us understand how we could change the way we engage. Is that the way you've picked it up? Because first of all, thank you for what you're doing with Think Papanui. It's great.
Thank you. Yes, that's my reading of what's proposed. Is it's not to take feedback on it's to take feedback on how to take feedback, so to speak. Yeah. Really, it's that first step of how can we hear from you? How would you like to communicate with us? What would you like to know?
But you said another thing that was really important, and that is closing the loop. So after people have engaged, feeding back to them the result that they had, and also the thank you for being involved and the offer of continuing to be involved.
Yep. Yep, that's what I take from it and what I think is important. And I'd just comment too that what I see here is an expanding of where council's taking its input from. I don't see this at all, and I guess the author of the report can speak to it, but I don't see it as in any sense a shift away from hearing from people, but it's just a sense of widening the scope.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your the deputation. Can you to share your experience with us, like our mayor mentioned earlier regarding the community, engage with community. Your definition, what is the community? I just want to know, because while Papa Louis, I'm not sure, but by my Hornby or Rickson Wigan area, there's a diversified community. Geographically, we have a neighborhood support, resident association, community board, and council. But demographic, we have information and service the sectors. We did have different ethnic groups. So your definition should be cover all of them or part of them.
For me, yeah, absolutely, it's all of them. And for Think Papanui, it's everybody who lives in or has an interest in the Papanui ward.
All of them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Where those, because based on the report, they have 30 to 50 residents foreign will be organized this group. What's your view? These 50 people, where they are come from, how to choose? Is random or particular to choose, Peter?
I think there's more to that than I can give you a quick answer in the time available. Sorry, it might be a question for the council to consider. I think it can be done. I've done a fair bit of sort of focus group work and research work, wearing other hats, and 30 or 50 people from across this area will give you good input.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for coming in, Simon.
Thank you.
And we will now move to that paper, since we've just had the deputation on it. So I'd welcome Diane Katie to the table, please.
We just confirm the minutes or...
Oh, sorry. You're right. So we've got confirmation of previous minutes. Anyone happy to move those? Mike, seconder. Melanie. All those in favour? Any against? No, thank you very much. So Mike and Melanie. Yeah, Mike and Melanie. Right. Thank you very much for writing this on my behalf, really, based on the resolution that was passed in the annual plan. If you could talk us through it just quickly, that'd be great.
Thank you. As you mentioned, this is in response to a resolution to establish a residents' forum. So this paper puts up a proposed approach on how we might want to achieve that. Just for the purposes of clarity, when we refer to engagement in this paper, I'd like to point out that's seeking community views. So this is engagement generally. It's specifically about how we hear from people and how their views come into our decision-making processes. So what we've outlaid in this report is a three-step process on how we could go about achieving that, starting off with a research phase. Now, we have strong information from the resident survey, which sets out people's feelings about decision making, but what it doesn't really show us are some of the barriers to engagement, to people seeking their views, providing their views. It gives us, it just gives us the kind of like the general disconsent, but without that level of detail that offers us an opportunity to be able to do something about that. So what we propose in the first instance is inviting people to take part in a people's panel. A survey that would be with some specific engagement questions, consultation questions, which drill down into the barriers that people see for providing their views to council, and also for some of the things that potentially we are doing well, because we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And just for some context on that, this is something similar to Auckland Council. They have a people's panel. As do Dunedin, and so we're taking a model there that's used in other cities. And then the next stage of what we are proposing is that we will be taking the information and findings and are bringing together a residents forum. Now we see this residents forum, while we don't have the specific details on the membership of that, we are looking specifically to target those harder to reach people that we don't hear from, and to get them to look at the information before them and help provide some recommendations. Now I guess the value in doing that with a group of residents rather than just internally is we get that richness of experience. Otherwise it's a bit of a closed shop. You know, we've received the research and here's what we think. What we have here is an opportunity for our residents who we may not hear from so frequently provide us with some recommendations, some guidelines on how they think we could improve and strengthen our processes.
That's great. Thank you very much. Di, have you got anything to add to that?
No, as I say, it did come out of an annual plan, resolution. It's something we have been looking at, and it is actually part of our communication strategy to, sorry about that, to actually talk to communities who don't usually, take part in our process. So it aligns totally in the listening sort of phase as to what our residents are saying. And I think, we're one of the councils who doesn't actually have sort of a formalised panel. So, looking at the research when Katie and I pulled this together, we looked at Auckland, we looked at Melbourne, and, it is a way, and I think even in Melbourne, they get their residents panel or people's panel to actually write some of the plans for them based on what the community thinks. And I think Simon made a really good point. We do hear from the people who don't like what we're doing, but there are a lot of people out there who actually just want to have their say too, and not just sort of say what they don't like.
Well, as Bentane, I hear from the passionately for and the passionately against, but I am very aware that there's a lot of people out there who aren't having their say, and I'd really like to be able to talk to them.
Okay, thank you. Ben?
I don't want to go back over history, but I'd really like you to describe, and I'm looking at you, Di, the situation with what we did in the Port Hills, which was a different, novel way of doing things when I first arrived in this role. Over the communication, about bringing in the local community to help design what people wanted to know.
It was we did Port Hills, but we started that off with actually the land drainage project, where we actually they had sort of 8 areas of work all around the city, and instead of us thinking, we'll go out and consult this way, we actually got the community to come and say to us what they wanted to hear from us and how they wanted to hear from it. And we got very clear messages that what we thought the way of engaging and communicating was not the way they thought. So I can still remember Diana Donald from South Shore, South New Brighton, saying, I don't want a shiny thing in my letterbox. I want you to come out, talk to me face to face, and have drop-in sessions. And so we did that too with the Port Hills as to, how we approached engagement, communication there. And what we think isn't necessarily the way that the community wants to hear from us. So those exercises were really valuable. And Leanne, you were part of all those discussions. And at the end, we all walked away. We didn't always agree on everything, but we actually had a really good working relationship where they felt they could come into council and say what they liked and didn't like.
But and so I guess the follow-on is that, is this really a broadening of that concept of trying to find a way of engaging people, for example, in the long-term planning process?
Yeah, totally. Because they know their communities better than we do as staff. So it's drawing on that community knowledge to actually frame how we do things in here.
So it's more the how, not the what.
Absolutely, totally.
Yeah. Thank you.
More the how.
Okay, thank you. Melanie, then Sam, then Tim, then Jimmy, then Andrew.
I've actually got a list of questions, but so you might want to stop me at some point.
Okay.
In the bit from the residents' survey, it said about people not understanding council decision making. Is that part of this, or some parallel work, or what's happening there?
So I think it's, so we do have a communication strategy, which is definitely one of the key points for that is making council decisions, explaining them to the community in different ways. So this will definitely be part of that, because the community is going to tell us how they want to hear from us and engage with us. So I'd see them running very parallel, Melanie.
Okay. And then the bit about people being satisfied with accuracy of information about council decisions, what exactly does that mean?
So, so there were 2 surveys that went out. So the point of context survey actually showed that I think it was in Kev's here, I think it was about 75% were actually satisfied with the accuracy of the information that council put out. I think what you're referring to maybe is around sometimes people consult and their view isn't the one that's picked up, and so therefore they maybe query the accuracy. So it's a different,
Okay. Because I wonder why they would think it's inaccurate, but anyway. And then for the People's Panel, the online part, and that's trying to get a range of people. For the communications plan, you've got about the tile on the front page of the website. But that's, and you've talked about how to reach harder audiences as well with workshops. But is there anything else, and how are you planning on reaching the harder to reach audiences? Like, how are you going to get them?
So I guess it will come down to taking a view on who is responding to that survey, and then acknowledging who isn't, and then looking at a targeted approach to reaching them. At the moment, I'm a bit unsure, not knowing who isn't replying, but once we have a clearer view on that, then it's good money will say face-to-face. Will form a big part of what we're going to be doing, and we will try all the tactics we've got in our book to try to reach people.
So you're basically saying you're going to get the demographics of the people who are replying?
Yes.
We've got quite vast databases, and we'll send it out through all those networks, including the community board networks that you've got.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Sam.
Cool, thank you. A couple of questions. The first one is, I'm just trying to get context. So we're talking about trying to fix the problems with engagement. How many people would we have working within the organisation on comms and engagement now?
So
Specifically consultation?
Specifically consultation, the consultation engagement team?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, Katie, your team about 8?
I've got 8 in my team.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
So a lot of that engagement is around the capital projects, as well as the general engagement with the community.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand within the organisation the professional element of staff that we have working on communications and engagement.
For clarity, 7.
Okay.
Across the whole range of all of the projects that we consult on.
Okay. And the next one is around the cost. So it's 10 to 15 grand. Does that include staff time?
No.
So how much staff time would we expect this to consume?
Look, I'm sorry, Councillor, off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to provide you with an accurate estimation of that. I don't see it as particularly arduous, but there would be some staff time involved.
Okay.
And actually, I don't see staff being sort of like dedicated to do this. It would be just enhancing what we already do. Yeah. So
It's
we're
not
just
a
doing
dedicated resource on
Yes,
this.
yeah. We're just doing things better, so it'll be part of, we might drop something that we're not doing as well to sort of make, if this is working for us.
Right, okay. And just the other one, I think it might be a typo, 3.14. It says phase 2 is February 2020. I'm assuming that's 2021.
21, with apologies. Yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And just, and I guess probably just the final one is, and we'll probably get to it in terms of the membership and that, but how do you think, the biggest concern I get from people is that they're out there just working to pay their rates and the like, so they're not overly interested in doing this. They kind of elect us to make those decisions. How do you think this will change that?
It's not about the what, it is about the how. So there's no element of decision making in this. This is just about how people want to be engaged with, what channels work for them, what works for them. So I take your point, people are time poor, they have other things on their mind, but at the moment we have information that says they aren't satisfied, but we don't have the information or the bit that says, so what can we do differently? And this is what this project is aiming to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim.
Yeah, thank you. And look, I think what Simon said earlier on about the closing the circle is really important, and that's probably the most important thing that's come to me, because I'm kind of confused. We've got two things going here, haven't we? In the sense that, and if you look at 3.4, it shows a fairly, there's a group of people that have a fairly dismal view of the council. And our processes are cynical, we don't listen, etc. So, are we going to approach new groups that are going to think that? You know, like, what are we actually trying? Are we trying to change what we've already done? Because if we're going to new groups, it's not changing what we're already doing. What it's doing is just opening the door to other groups that may or may not be interested. I'm not sure. So, what is the absolute key here?
Yeah, I don't think we want to change what we do. We just want to widen what we are doing now and just bring in new people who aren't engaged in the process at all. And I think it's really important. You know, you say that, and I think you referred to the groups we always hear from. We want to hear from the other people as well, because I always look at my street, and if I went down and I said, oh, look, I'm really busy working on the long-term plan, they'd all just look at me blankly, you know, because they actually don't care. But if I went down and said, we're shutting off the corner of the street, you know, to get out of here, they'd all care. So, and it's quite interesting, as I say, the sort of round the barbecue, the tennis club conversations. They don't actually hate what we're doing. It's just, you know, if it affects them. So it's just getting that wider community in. And as I say, I talked to a woman the other day, and she was going to a function at the Canterbury Club because she just wanted to hear Dawn, because she just wanted to hear where the council was going. And I saw her the following week, absolutely loved it, you know, because that was her first engagement with the council. So it's, as I say, it's not changing or whatever. We do hear from the same people. We'll continue to hear from those people. And it's just hearing from a wider group of people.
Because that is interesting, because some of the comments are that, you know, if we do the same old thing, we will always achieve the same old thing. We're just going to achieve it with more people.
Not necessarily. Yeah,
okay.
That's the aim of this, not necessarily just to achieve the same old thing with different people.
So, and in that consultation, in that group, are you going to include the community board staff who actually, I mean, I think,
Totally.
I can only speak for our community board, I think they do a huge amount of work within our communities. And they do a lot of work with the small groups that don't want to be, and in some of our areas they don't want to have their head up because of, you know, maybe social welfare, bad experience, whatever.
Yeah.
So is that?
Yes, totally.
Absolutely. So community governance is part of the working group that is doing this piece of work.
Yeah.
So they are involved in this process.
Yeah. Because you know, like the example Leanne gave with regards to the Port Hills, which was a great one. Another great one, which I was involved in, was the Heathcote River Linear Plan, which is an outstanding process, which got so many different groups absolutely on board in so many different communities, but nothing's happened. So I think that, you know, I struggled. So we've got to close the circle, because you're only one spoke in the wheel. And until we join it up, and we talk about silo, we've talked about it for years, and I don't see, I just, you know, if we're going to go out and see new people and new groups and find out new information and open those doors, are we opening doors up to fail because we've still got the same plan?
We do have the opportunity, though, because it is...
It's a question.
Yeah, it's a question.
Improving the processes for consultation, and that does largely sit here in Di's team. So it's looking at how we can do better, what's good and what needs to improve. And we do have, I guess, a little bit more control over that, and it does sit within the unit. And it's you know, whatever recommendations would come from this is something that we would therefore then be able to action.
Okay, Jimmy?
Okay, thank you. And regarding the community, the consultation, I just want to know, because over the last several years, probably start you did have, you know, lots of feedback from the wider community. So if we go to these residents, the kind of consultation, which group, based on your understanding, we need to strengthen more consultation with them? Is which group?
We don't collect demographic data about who engages with us. So it's and I've spoken before about the challenges of that, because if you collect too much information at the point of putting in a submission, it can also be seen as a barrier to putting in a submission. But sort of like what I can tell from Google Analytics would show me that slightly more women than men engage with the process, and that we definitely have more people in their 30s and 40s engaging with us, and numbers drop off significantly when we're talking about youth. And so I would say that youth is an area where we would need better representation. I don't have the data to support this, but I would suspect also that culturally and linguistically diverse communities is another area where we would also need to have better representation.
Okay. Second question. Okay. Yeah. Second question. Because our council, we established a multicultural strategy back to the 3.5 years ago. But 1.5 years ago, we have the implementation plan. The goal 3, we already emphasize, enable, promote participation, civic life, and the public decision making by people from all communities. And we have all those action items, 6 action items. We have who is the leading the unit, who is supporting the unit. I just want to know, because your consultation, then you also get involved. How do you think in this one, whether it can be a model, to promote to all the wide range community, and which area need to be improved? We can make it more kind of implementable, more successful.
Yeah. So one of the things that we have done, and I think it was last year, we put a translation service on our website. So 14 languages, recognising that our website was very, we're saying we want to drive people digitally to have their say because it's obviously cost effective. Well, that's not great if you actually can't read what's on the website. So having that translation facility, and we're getting quite good hits. We're getting about 400 interactions a month through that translation. So obviously there was a real need for it. I'm also working very closely with Claire. We're looking at when you come into council, there's cards under, if you're, you can sort of signal which language you'd like to talk to us in, and there are prompts there for our customer service reps to give people from other ethnic communities. So we're very mindful that Christchurch now has a different face. The community, there's so many people, and we want to be part of that, and we want to be actively working with those communities. And I think after the terror attacks last year, so many staff at council did form very good relationships with those impacted communities. We started a newsletter, and the readership kept going up and up, and we're going to change that newsletter into a newsletter for all ethnic communities. So in that way, we'll then be able to draw people into our consultations. But there are community leaders in those communities, and we want to work with them too. And we're totally committed to doing that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Andrew, and then Jake.
Thank you. I've got a number of questions. I'll go through them reasonably quickly. So this came out of the annual plan resolution. Clearly, it's a response to the results of the resident satisfaction survey. Given Sam's question around the fact that we have the communications and engagement team, and we already have people there that would be, I imagine, engaged in, the issue of, we've got a particular result from the resident satisfaction survey that we need to respond to in some way. Is this something that you would have naturally recommended to us anyway? I guess if the answer to that is yes, given the results of previous surveys, why have we not had this put in front of us as a recommendation before? And what other alternatives might you recommend or have recommended?
I think, I'll get Katie to add to it, but I think probably, this is initially we're fact-finding what people think. So we've already, and I know Kath is sitting behind me, we've already got a research and monitoring team who are providing those insights. So I think a lot of what we may be doing in council, we're not publicising enough. Every day I get a list from the call centre of every conversation that's come through that call centre, and that's a really good source of what it is that is concerning our community at the moment, which then I can then say to my Newsline team or any of my other communicators, hey, there's a lot of people talking about potholes, for example. We need to do a story on potholes and get some information out about that. So it's actually responding to those issues as they come in, and actually tailoring our communication so we're agile to respond to some of those community concerns. So when you say we would have recommended it, obviously we see that result, and every year that result is not improving about connecting. So we have redone our whole communication strategy about, it's all about the resident, it's all about us, listening, etc. So I can actually do a briefing on that survey if you would want to refresh. So yes, this is something that was very much part of the resident survey. Actually, what worked all those years ago when we were looking at land drainage, when we were working on the Port Hills, getting the community to tell us how they want to be communicated with. And so this is, as I said, first step in that process, and it is something what I would have recommended because I can see it working in other cities, and I think, when I look at the Melbourne example, it's absolutely brilliant.
All right, thank you. So we talk about what the community is going to tell us, or the need to bring in people that are not currently engaged at all. At the same time, we keep talking about groups, which groups could have a number of definitions in this context, but it may well be that it's individual residents who are not connected with any group that we're really wanting to hear from here. So this brings us to the makeup of the panel and how we get there. How will we actually achieve diversity, but as well as diversity, because there can be an emphasis on diversity that then means a panel isn't truly representative of the community. How will we achieve that, and at the same time avoiding capture by likely suspects, people who are already in leadership positions, people who've already got very strong views that they articulate regularly, and I'm not going to mention the names of any of those people, but I'm sure we're all thinking of some. How are we going to make sure that this is genuinely representative, that it respects the diversity in our communities in all of its colours, and isn't captured by loud voices that we hear from regularly?
So obviously, I don't have the answers to all of that just at the moment, and I recognise that it's a big piece of work. However, with support from our monitoring and research team, we are looking at making sure representative. So that will be looking at Stats NZ and taking a view of who is living in Christchurch, and then going out and trying to find people who would be willing to take part in this process, who are a mixture of people that we haven't heard from before, but we also need some people on that group that we have heard from, because we also need their insights into the process and what isn't working. And so, as I said, I don't have the complete answers on how we will pull that forum together. I just know that it needs to be representative, that it will possibly require boosting to get the harder to reach audiences, and our intent is to make sure that we are hearing from people that we don't necessarily hear from, but also have some representation there from people we do, to provide a balance and mix of views.
So that's a particular, that issue is a particular concern of mine, and I'm guessing I'm probably not on my own with that. So what will be the process for reporting that back to the committee, and what level of oversight is intended by the committee of the final makeup of the group? So a part of it is, what process are we going to use to achieve what we want to achieve? So it's agreeing what we think the panel should look like. And you've clearly articulated some of that back to me in the answer, but it's what's the process for achieving that? And I think we need to be confident in that. And then we need to be confident that whatever the list of names is that makes up the group in the end has achieved that. I'm guessing you're limited in your ability to answer that question, given that there's still some thinking to happen, but I guess we need to know what the process is going to be, so that we can be confident that we will achieve that, given that we're potentially agreeing to this today in the absence of that information.
We'll take some advice on that, but briefing back to you on the makeup of that is something that we would do. There is some debate, and you might like to think about whether or not the names of the forum members would be public, because that could be perceived as a barrier for involvement. So it may be something that the names aren't public, or it may be public, but that will influence, I think, any decision about how we bring back who would be on that group.
Yeah, I think it's important the whole thing's really transparent and it's a good process. Because what I wouldn't want is to run, the process that we're talking about here, end up with the results and then the results be discredited because people didn't like the makeup of the panel. So I think we need to think about,
Absolutely.
and appreciate you don't have the answers today, but what the makeup of the panel needs to be and how we achieve that.
And we'll work very much with the community governance team on that too, as well as the research and monitoring team.
Yeah, and I'll be interested in the view of others on elected member involvement in that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we've got next Jake, then Yanni, then Pauline.
Cool. A couple of my questions have kind of been answered. Thanks for taking my question, Sam. And also one of Andrew's as well. But I'm just a bit puzzled as to why this is a chairperson's report when it's something staff would have recommended anyway. Normally that would have GM sign off. Can I just clarify that from you, particularly Mary, that this is something you would recommend to us?
Let's bring on this. I think that there has been a lot of consideration about this, and it's been a concern of council for a long time about whether you are reaching and communicating with a representative group of the city, or whether you're just hearing from the same people with the same views, or whether there are barriers to people communicating with council. So I think this is a good first step in actually looking at this and saying, how can we do things differently? How can we make sure that we are not putting up barriers to people communicating with us? And how can we make sure that we are reaching people that don't usually come in and talk to us or influence or have a say in what we're doing? So this may not be the only thing, and it may not be the perfect thing, but it is a good start just to get I guess a feel for, is there anything we're doing wrong or that we should be doing differently, that would actually encourage more people to participate in those type of processes and systems.
That sounds pretty supportive. And I guess my second question was around the cost. I guess I'm just a bit sceptical in how low the figure is, and I know that this is going to be predominantly a staff funded sort of thing, but there's an opportunity cost if we're doing this in place of something else. You must have some idea, you must have scoped at least some sort of time for how long this project will take.
So as a unit, I'm tasked with delivering, communications, marketing, engagement to the community, and I want to do that in the best way possible. And if this is a tool that enables us to improve our process, I'll jump at it. Regarding cost, I try to do everything because I always put a front page test over it. Everything on a shoestring. We got the Newsline channel established for $35,000, which is pretty cheap to get a whole digital news channel up and running, where other councils it was several $100,000. So when we put that cost in, that is just recognising basically around, if you're part of a people's panel, we probably will have to, if you're coming to talk to us or be involved, etc., we'll probably have to give you a bit of pizza or something like that along the way. So it's not staff time that's budgeted into it, but for me it's just about my unit doing another piece of work, which I do all the time. Any way I can do things better, we do. Yeah. So just because I put a low cost in there, don't penalise me for that. I'm trying to be constrained in how I spend. Yeah.
Anything else? No, Yanni.
Thank you. I just wondered if there was any reflection on what we'd learnt from 2012 from the communications audit that we did then, and how much of that information is still relevant to the issues that we have today.
So I think what that audit, that was an organisation-wide audit looking at communications right across the council. I was actually here when that happened. It wasn't just looking at the communications that the communication team put out, and it found very much that as an organisation we needed to step up, and every phone call that came into this place was really important, and it was actually about making our communication, making the council more accessible to our residents. And so I think that has been an underlying principle of all communication strategies we've done since then. So this is totally relevant. This is actually making, listening to people's voice, which I think is what the communication audit in 2012 found, that the council needs to listen and to respond and to be part of the community, and this is very much being that.
So, given that review in 2012 identified most of the same things that we're now trying to find answers to, I'm sort of struggling to understand the need for the residents forum and what will be different. And, you know, one thing in there was, for example, the reason why people weren't satisfied that we were making decisions in the best interest of the city was they didn't actually like the specific decisions we were making. So if you take like the cathedral decision where the overwhelming majority of people were against it, and yet we still made that decision, we're never going to please people. So I think we've got a lot of information about why people aren't happy with council. And that also had about being more open, upfront and transparent. Yeah. And given that we've had the Ombudsman's report since, what steps will this take and this residents forum to address issues around things like being upfront, transparency and openness?
Well, it's another way, I think, of reaching out to the community and to try and get people involved in the council process. So, you know, about being transparent, I think we continue to sort of become more transparent. Well, you know, I mean, I think from my perspective, everything in this organisation is basically in the open arena, unless it's sort of a commercially sensitive or it affects an individual's privacy. So I think, you know, as an organisation, you know, my team, for example, is very into getting information out. Right.
So if the Residents Forum comes up with recommendations on transparency and openness, yep, that'll be fed back and things will be changed?
I think that...
In terms of how we do stuff?
I think that when it comes to that stuff, that will be a decision that we make rather than a decision that the staff make. Well, the recommendations will be to us.
We haven't made the decision on the local government statement. We didn't have any discussion on that. Yeah. So it's just that there was a number of things in 2012 which we agreed to where we've actually gone backwards. And I guess I was just trying to understand doing more talking to people rather than actually fixing some of the things that we know are not working. Why we wouldn't just also fix the things that aren't working. Like Tim made the point, when people engage in a process and then they don't get followed up, that things don't happen.
I think, Councillor Johansson, with due respect, I think it's a bit difficult to put two people who have written a paper about a very specific thing to ask them to redo an audit of a report that was done 8 years ago. Okay. So if you want more information about that, we could try and address that outside this meeting.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is what, in my mind, like the Residents Forum, we're being told this is really around communications. But I guess I'm concerned that actually it's not about communications, it's actually about how we do things as a council in terms of decision making. And so what I don't understand through what's being proposed is how will it address the other issues that cause people frustration in terms of their satisfaction with council.
Can we just stop briefly, Yanni, because the specific resolution that this is trying to resolve was one around identifying the barriers to engagement with council. So what might come out of the panel is I would pick probably two streams. There will be the actual technical stuff with the documents and the bits of paper and how we go out and talk to people face to face, that kind of stuff. I think that we will probably also get a set of information on what happens to the information once people have engaged and whether they then trust the decision-making process. And I think we'll get both of those streams. What happens to that is up to us when the recommendations come back.
So the 3.2 in our report says the resolution was in response to feedback in the annual plan that people do not feel that they can have an impact on decisions that affect their future. And then it goes on to talk about all the other things. So you saying like basically like 3.4 as well goes around cynicism, loss of trust in process, transparency. That's not being addressed through here. This is only about whether people choose to engage with us.
So this is us being transparent about trying to work on that and how we engage. So it's not us having a couple of little focus groups with people and saying how should we do better. It's not with us just taking social media. It's us actually going and saying, not us saying what we should be doing better, but asking the community to make those recommendations.
Right. And so can I just check then, like, instead of like the point that Councillor Chen made was we've got a whole bunch of existing groups where we actually have given an undertaking to do that. We've got a whole bunch of strategies, things like arts, heritage, water, multicultural, where we've actually given a commitment to engage and listen to people, talk to people. But I'm just trying to understand why we wouldn't use those processes first before we establish a residents forum.
We do use those existing groups, and they form a very important part of our stakeholder database, and they receive information every time we do, or if it's relevant to them, every time we do a consultation. So, but it's still not reaching that problem where we have this information in front of us that speaks to the fact that people aren't happy with their ability to have their say. And I have that information that says I'm not happy, but I don't have that information that says, right, well, what are some of the reasons why I feel I can't have my say? And that isn't something that is well articulated in the research that we have. Without that information, I can't begin to build up a kind of like a process of things that we might improve upon and do differently. So we will just continue to do, the consultation and engagement we do, and we don't do a bad job of that, either. And we do reach communities, but this is an opportunity to take it a step further and go, right, we have an opportunity to do something that little bit better. We can continue to do what we always do, or we can take what we have been hearing, and it is year on year now, and say, right, line in the sand, we'd like to try something different, and this is the approach we'd like to take.
Yeah.
So to be very clear, this is part of the solution. It's not going to solve everything that's wrong with the council at the moment. It's part of the solution. It's just one small step.
It's just that you've got existing groups who we've given a commitment to engage. So if you take that arts one, there was a whole bunch of work we were supposed to do with that community that when we were discussing funding, hasn't actually been done. So I guess what I'm mindful of is we're asking people to do more, and we've still got outstanding work that we can't actually do, or we're not doing.
So this isn't more. This is smarter and slightly different.
Yeah. The final question I had was in terms of a complaints process for people, because through this process you're talking about reaching people that are not engaging. But the people that repeatedly engage, is there any process to understand why they repeatedly engage, and whether there's a better way, either through an independent complaints process or another mechanism? So, the people that come annual plan and say the annual plan information isn't acceptable, I can't make submissions, and then they come back a year later and said, you said you would improve it, nothing's happened, I still can't understand it. Is there anything that we're going to do around looking at the people that have tend to engage a lot, but always seem to have the same issue get raised repeatedly?
Do you want to answer that?
I can answer that. So this is both. So we're going to be working with both those people who already engage with us and are either satisfied or dissatisfied with what we do, to work out what it is that they would like improved and where they see the barriers are. And then the community, this isn't us hearing it and then us making a recommendation on what we change. That's going to go to the community group, the residents forum, for them to make recommendations to us. So that we're actually hearing from those people on what they want us to change. And then as a council, or as a committee, we will get to decide what we do with that.
And not every submission we get is about a complaint about council. We get a lot of really constructive, and just around the complaints process, as I say, that information that I get from the call centre every day, there are lots of compliments in there about what the council's doing, as well as complaints, and just alluding to what Councillor Scandrett said about closing the loop. Anyone who makes a submission, they always get a letter, or if there's other stuff that we can't address, a phone call. Very much thank you so much for being part of this process.
We do thank you. We thank, and we provide a letter letting them know any changes as a result of consultation. So everyone who does take part in that process does have the loop closed for them. But I'm, again, really interested to understand there's a whole lot of people out there who are mildly satisfied, mildly dissatisfied, who just aren't, for whatever reason, engaging in the decision-making process. And how can we encourage them, and what would it take to encourage them to be part of that process? Because there's some very big decisions that are being made by council, with only a slither of views heard from the community.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just a little bit confused with this, I must say, and it's good questions and discussions. It's actually confusing me a bit more. But you said previously about you cited the Port Hills and the Flockton flooding And what we learned from that is people told us how they want us to engage. So we know then.
No, we don't know. We know about those specific issues about how they wanted to engage. This is about council-wide decisions, etc.
It was also quite a long time ago. Would be the other thing. Technology's moved on. We've moved on in some of the things that we're doing. You know, that was some years ago now, and while some things might stay the same, it's good to test again to see, you know, where things are at.
Right. And the other thing is that this is sort of destination as a focus group of about 30 people, which I find a bit of an oxymoron, that we're actually trying to reach more people, but we're going to end up with a small focus group.
It's one. This is one tactic of many tactics that we use to engage.
The recommendations from the group, and it's just how what's practical, what's feasible, and we could theoretically, another way of doing it is sort of like focus groups with different groups all around, but that's you know, that's a massive resource. Or you can bring everyone together, a smaller subset of people, and together for sort of like a day workshop and nut some things out, and that's another approach to doing it as well. And this, given time, given resources, is an efficient and effective way of achieving what we want to achieve here.
Okay, and the other thing is, why would we just not use our community boards to deliver this?
So
at no resource. Yeah, but I mean, isn't that what our community boards do? Like, if you could get every board member to engage by, you know, door knocking and feeding back and stuff like that, isn't that what the community boards do?
That's what you do, but I guess this piece is looking at, from the residents' point of view, how did they want to be involved in the process, and I guess if you can speak confidently to that, you know, would love to hear, but it's actually giving the residents their opportunity to say, and it's not in any way cutting across the democratic process and your role in community boards and as councillors. It is simply about investigating from a resident's perspective why they do or do not choose to get involved in the decision-making process, why they do or do not get involved in sharing their views.
Okay, and my final question is around the budget. When this came up in the annual plan, I thought I remembered it was 10,000, and today we see 10 to 15. Does that include stage 3, the implementation?
No, and that includes. I mean, it's a bit rough, and it's the dependency on 30 to 50 people, and acknowledging some kind of recognition of their time, acknowledging the fact that we will need to provide kai, and acknowledging that we will probably need some independent facilitation to make a group that big work. It's purely for the delivery and recognition of people's time, and the variable there between 10 and 15 just recognises the difference there in numbers.
And I think having that independent facilitation is really important for people to be able to trust the outcome.
Yeah.
So there's been a couple of comments, so, you know, council just get the answers they want, and so we need to make sure that this process is as open and transparent and you know, trust building as possible.
So have we got any idea what stage 3 might cost?
That could just that could be anything from the way my team and I engage with communities and what we do, the tactics that we use. It might be stuff that we roll through in the whole PIP unit.
So no,
it's not necessarily an expensive process. There's not necessarily going to be big things stood up at the process of this. It's about working smarter with the tools, you know, that we have.
Yeah. And I'm just also adding to Sam's question too, that you've got 8 in your team engagement.
Yes, 7. They're not all full time. Yep, sorry.
How many are in comms?
So comms covers media, marketing, communications, and we've also got a design team, and there's 45, including Katie's team.
All right, so about 9.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Melanie.
There's the People's Panel, and then there's the Forum, and they're quite distinct.
Yep.
This is what I understand. the People's Panel will be something that's ongoing, with people that will continually be added to it over years into the future, because it's an online survey, basically. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically what I wanted to sort of point out, that, you know, through the process of getting people for the forum, we'll hopefully add them to the panel as well. And I was thinking, from Pauline's point, I'd already thought of it, that community boards could be involved in that too. But the point of the panel, you're saying, is to identify the gaps so that then we can really work to fill those gaps through the forum.
Yep.
And I'm not quite sure that everybody's understood that. So would that be, that's all correct?
Yeah.
The panel is the research piece.
Yeah. And when the resolution was passed in the annual plan, we want, you know, it has come quickly to you, you know, but I didn't want to be sitting here in a year and you saying, well, where's that paper on the... So it was very much an action. We wanted to get it in front of you as quick as possible, because we just thought it, you know, that was something you tasked us to do. Yeah.
And we wanted to put forward an approach that was built on the information that we already have, and with the I guess the channels and the tools that we have available to us, and it also is as efficient and effective as we can possibly make it.
Yeah. Do you want to just point out that the People's Panel is building on the Life in Christchurch stuff that already...
Yeah, we already have a sort of like a database of people who have indicated that they'd like to take part in surveys, and we would be adding to that with this process. So the People's Panel is building on that existing tool that we have here at Council, which provides us with such a rich database of information.
Yeah, so it's not us building something new from scratch and spending lots of resources on that.
But it is an opportunity, and the next survey that will come out will have a particular engagement focus in it, which gives us this opportunity to test some of these things.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Thank you. So I guess depending on what we're consulting on or engaging on, I should probably use that term, a panel would lead into the forum.
The research from that will lead to the forum discussing the findings of that
It's
research.
just for this one though.
And coming up with recommendations.
We're not going to keep going with that.
No. So when we have these, there are some items that we will be going out to engage with, which are city-wide, but some that are community-wide. So that would adjust, so the forum would adjust per community, or is it
No,
just...
the forum doesn't. The forum is a moment in time. It is set up for the purpose of looking at the issue that we have here about engaging with residents on issues of citywide importance. The step process is simply to get us the research, feeds into the forum, and then, I mean, there might be a recommendation that comes from that forum that some, you know, ongoing test group is test things, but that's, I'm speculating. At that point, this project ends, effectively. It is not a long-term, ongoing, we are setting up a residents forum.
So
it's a project to look at specifically how we can improve the way we get community views.
So once we got into those communities which have not, or those groups that have not traditionally been involved or been wanting to be involved or have chosen not to be, they'll be added to the database and be included in the future with everybody else.
Yes.
And the ways we engage with them will improve.
Yeah. And
So we've got Andrew, then Mike, and then Jimmy.
I'm becoming a little bit confused by the answers to some of these questions. What I've heard is that we're going to have a group which involves community board members, includes community governance staff, includes community leaders.
No, the panel isn't that.
Includes, and I mean, somebody will put me right on this, I'm sure, includes people we normally hear from, with citywide representation across a diverse and representative group, in a group of 30.
No.
Most of whom we don't normally engage with. Maybe there's something I've misunderstood, and that's the reason I'm asking the question.
Deputy Dinner, I don't have the answers, and I apologise if we haven't been clear. We don't have the answers at the moment on exactly how we are going to set up that residents forum. All I am going from is the fact that it has to be representative, so it has to reflect the communities in Christchurch, and that we want to make sure that we have within that forum voices that we don't normally hear from, and some that we do, for the balance of people who can speak to the process and what it's like to be part of the process. So the governance team involvement is in helping us to establish the forum, but not to be part of the forum in itself. The involvement of community boards in the forum is not something that we are able to provide advice on at the moment.
So, I mean, some thought clearly has been given, though, to some thought has been given to what we're intending to achieve here. That must then lead to consideration of what this forum needs to look like, at least at the basic level, at the high level, to achieve the outcomes. So, I mean, are we actually intending having community board members on the forum?
No.
Are we actually? I mean, people are saying no, but I'm not hearing that is the case.
Sorry, there's just the community board involvement people mentioned is to try and get people involved in the research phase to feed in the information that will then be looked at by the residents forum, by the representative group. And then that will be, once that group makes recommendations on how we improve our engagement and cut down the barriers, then the project ends and the information is taken on board.
So what I'm focusing on is the people that will be on the forum. I think I've got that right. The people that will be on the forum. So will that be wholly made up of people who are not normally engaged in our processes, or will there be other people on that forum as well? Is that the intention?
The idea would be that there would be a split, and I don't know the exact split that would be, but it would be very useful to have some people who have engaged with our processes to be able to provide advice to us on how those processes are working. And so I would see that there would be some people who have engaged with us and some people who haven't, but I don't have the detail of the exact split.
So the intent is for us to workshop that further as a committee, and so that you can have confidence in the makeup of the panel.
So let's just drill down into that then, because I mean, I need to have some confidence in this in some way, so it might be through a process. So assuming this passes today, you're then going to go away and do some work to design a workshop which allows us to have input into, at a high level, what the makeup of the panel is.
The forum.
What the makeup of the forum is. And, you know, that's the point at which we say, you know, we want 20% of this to be people we normally hear from and 80% of it not to be, or whatever.
That's it.
And you'll have some safeguards in place to make sure that we get the diversity and representation that we're talking about.
And we're hoping you'll say we want some young people, we want some elderly people, we want some people from ethnic communities, we want some people from the east, people from
diversity
the
in all of its colours.
Diversity not only geographically, but in how the community, so that it represents the makeup of our community.
So you'll do the thinking, you come back to a workshop, we give guidance, you then use that guidance to make up the panel. That forum. And then go off and do the work and report back, and that then feeds into possible changes to the way that we engage in future. All right. And the actual makeup of the panel, so you then go away and the actual makeup of the forum, you go away and do the work and you end up with a list of names who are the people that are going to actually do the work here. Do we get the opportunity to see that list of names and approve it as well?
Yes.
Could we workshop that with you? Is that something that we...
So that'll come out of the workshop? All right, great. So there are a couple of points, a couple of touch points for us to make sure that we're getting what we want out of this, and to take your advice so that we make sure we get what we want.
And I'm sorry if we've been confusing.
No, I may well be the only person that's been confused. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, then Jimmy. And then Aaron.
Just assuming you're going to move this, I'm happy to second it, and so we can just get into debate.
Okay, thank you. Jimmy.
Because I'm still concerned, you know, those that are the 30 to 50 the people confirm. If we did have the existing the resources, like Council Yanni mentioned, I also emphasize, we need to, you know, preparation beforehand. That's very important, because youth group, they require to use council, horticultural advice group, mandatory group, and also inform group. We're already there. they kind of should be, have 1 or 2 representatives come out. They integrate all those information, then those forum, I don't think so, we need to manage the forum. Paperwork
Jimmy,
beforehand, that's important.
Is this a question? This is not debate yet.
But that's a question, whether saving those resources, one. And also 3.18. Because if we thought that these 30 to 50 people focus on this, strengthen the consultation, but why these people is a focus group to support, guide the council engage process, I'm concerned we cannot exclude some other the people. They are also the community leaders or opinion leaders. This is my concern.
That's your concern, yes, but what's your question?
My question is why we need to become the focus group, support and guide the councils engage process. How about the other people?
Jimmy,
this is my question.
So are you asking why we have residents? Why we have residents telling us how they'd like to be engaged?
No,
so
if like the multicultural and the youth council can have reps on the panel.
Yeah.
No, the forum.
The forum. So Jimmy, we're going to have a workshop. We're going to have a workshop.
You need 3.18 when you've got those other groups already who you could be talking to.
Sorry, Chair, you mean we have the workshop? If we have workshop, whether this meeting agenda present to us.
Jimmy, we've been through this like 4 times.
What is wrong with everybody?
What do you mean? Which one first?
So Jimmy,
yes,
Jimmy, we don't know that the residents' forum will continue. So the people's panel, the online, the survey stuff will keep going, but the residents' forum is just for this piece of work, and the rest of the time we will be using all of those other organisations as well. But the residents' forum might tell us, and we don't know, that they want a group that might include multicultural to keep us on our toes when it comes to engagement. We will see what they tell us at the end.
But those 30 to 50 people is new one.
We're not replacing. We're not replacing anything.
So that's confusing.
Hang on a sec. Hang on a sec. Before James, it's Aaron.
Just not. I struggle to use the word forum. It's just a weird word, but because.
It's a book you used to buy.
I didn't buy it. It was before my time, but
A forum.
Don't Google it. So my question would be, if we wanted a group or a forum that's based on these guys here are killing me. If we were after a group that engaged with council and didn't engage and was representative of the whole community, wouldn't it be easier to just use an existing group like
forum?
No, well, like the HHR Community Board, and add a few free thinkers.
Okay, we'll move on because I think we've covered that already. James?
Kia ora. Quite seriously, I used to live in a penthouse in the square, and so I would have liked to have been on such an entity as this forum. My question is, I understand that we're having this. We've got this paper because of a resolution in July, but I don't understand. Can someone explain why we didn't just go to the workshop rather than this here? Because, I mean, if the Deputy Mayor, who is so diligent, hasn't got his head around it, how am I expected to? I just think it would have been better just to have gone straight to a workshop. However, here we are here, but I do have reservations about it, but I'd like to discuss those further in the workshop. But did you consider workshopping before having to come here?
Yes, we were putting up a proposed approach. The resolution came back with, establish a residents forum. This is a proposed approach on how we might want to do that. It doesn't preclude the opportunity to workshop aspects later, but it was just a starter for 10 with the benefit of hindsight. Yes, potentially a workshop.
Yeah. One of the issues we've got now is that this is supposed to help inform our long-term plan engagement, and that, as we know from our many workshops, is creeping up on us quite quickly. So in the past, councillors have directed staff to engage in different ways during our annual plans and long-term plans to try and encourage wider diversity of people to engage with those and submit on those plans. And those haven't been successful. I think last time we asked for more community board involvement, but we got, 3 or 4 people at each workshop, those kind of things. And so what we're currently doing and what we currently ask staff to do isn't working for these citywide issues. And so this is us trying to work out how we will do it better for the one that's coming up on us really soon. We're going to have a workshop on this, looking at the makeup of that forum panel, but the initial research phase, the initial phase is really straightforward research and information gathering so that forum will be well informed when it makes its recommendations. Do we have any further questions? Yanni?
If this is to inform the LTP, but most of the LTP process will already be done by November 2020, so how's it going to benefit us?
No, this isn't the early engagement on the what's going into the long-term plan. This is the how we then consult with the community on it next year.
And ongoing.
It's going to feed into the how we engage, not the content of the engagement. That's
but the
a different
engagement
thing.
is not the formal consultation. The engagement is much greater than that.
Yeah. So this is not ideal. This is later than I would have liked.
Of the resolution, the timing on this will not enable us to really change any engagement on the LTP because we're doing that already. We've done most of it by the time it gets
for the decision-making stuff. This is not ideal. So it's not as soon as I would have liked. But this is very quick based on a resolution, and it's been a lot of work to get to this point. Is there the opportunity to bring the forum itself forward?
The challenge with that would be just simply the
Christmas
December,
break.
January. Yeah. So it would be as early in February as we possibly could get it, but just acknowledging that nothing much happens in December, January.
Yeah. But we can look at that at the workshop, which we will hold soon.
If there's a timing issue, why not just get research first just to redo the work they did in 2012, which basically was exactly the same?
We've got an in-house research and monitoring team that has got amazing connections with the community.
But so why not just do like a survey type thing, drilling down on the answers that we want from people rather than doing a whole...
Well, the People's Panel is an opportunity to get that base level of research, but we're not going to get the voices that we don't hear from in that process necessarily. We will hear from people who choose to engage, and then we won't get the recommendations the same way. We'll just have findings that come through from that.
Yeah. So, Yanni, we will have some findings that may be able to feed into things ahead of the recommendations. Because we will be hearing from the community in that way.
We will try to be as flexible as possible, and if anything is thrown up in that People's Panel information, then of course we will bring that through into the consultation that we're planning for the LTP.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Are there any last questions? Would you like to open the debate? Okay, excellent. Melanie. Right. Anyone else?
Look, I think this is a good idea, and what Leanne said earlier, doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome is obviously completely nuts. So I think this is a good plan, because if any of us can sit here and say that we hear from every single person in Christchurch, then our community boards talk to every single person in their ward, that each residents group represents everybody that lives in the area. We're fooling ourselves. So we need to do some work to get to the people that we don't normally engage with and find out how best to do that. And that's the whole point of this. The panel is a great starting place. It builds on the survey that we've already got, and continuing to build on the people in that survey over time is something that we ought to be doing, and this is basically going to promote that. And it will be looking at, a little bit about what people want in terms of being engaged with. So I think the panel's that thing that will be ongoing, and the forum, as we know, is a short piece of work. How to get those people that we don't normally engage with. Like, it will be some people that we've already said this many times. It'll be some people that we already do engage with. It might be someone like Simon Britton might be really great on it because you know, not because he's a community board member, but because he represents the community of Papanui and has experience in this, for example. So there would be someone who would know about engaging with us, and then there'll be the people that we don't normally engage with. And you know, when we read on Facebook that, you know, people are angry about decisions we've made, that's because they've read about it after we've made the decision and felt like they haven't been part of making that decision. So we need to get them before we make the decision as opposed to just hearing their views after, because by then it's way too late and then they're all upset. Well, it's not, you know, hard to understand why that is. So, you know, and then there's obviously the problem with people who don't agree with the decisions we've made and have been part of that process, but that's also can be due to the fact that they've got their personal view, and as councillors we have to look city-wide and we can't just look from one perspective, we have to look from a wide perspective. But that's a different thing. So I just think that we need to give this a go, because if we don't do this, what are we going to do instead? And if, you know, if someone's got a better idea, you know, here's your chance in the debate to suggest it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Tim?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, Di, Katie, thank you for what you do in your teams. I think the work you do is excellent. I found out for myself when I proposed to close the Summit Road overnight, and we got over almost 900 submissions as far away from America. So if we talk about engagement and consultation, etc., I think that was shows the reach that you can achieve and that you do achieve. Whether people choose to engage or not is a different question. So thank you to you and your teams for what you do. You certainly make the majority of us look very good around this table, which is pretty hard to do by the feedback from. But if you look at the feedback on 3.2, 3.3 and 3.4, that's a very hard job to do. With regards to some of the questions, you know, naming the public on the panels or forums, I think is essential if we're going to go there. And there's no question that we cannot have any type of elected member engagement with those at all, because I think it has to be absolutely independent and crystal clear on that. I wish that we had workshopped this before it came, because ironically to have engaged with us would have been a good way to go, and we would have had a better understanding. So I think, you know, because I am confused in the sense, I'm not confused wanting to get to those new groups or not new groups, those groups that haven't been or haven't wanted or whatever, but new groups entering the same process achieves nothing. And when we talk, and I think the terminology we use, some of it enhancing what we do, I think we have to look at adjusting what we do as part of it. So the three things from me, we're going after trying to contact new groups, which is great. I think the terminology, we have to look at and adjust what we are doing and how we do it, because if the feedback is that, you know, there is disgruntlement, then why? And I think the number one thing for me today was that full circle. We've got to get a full circle, and part of that full circle is hearing from those groups and those individuals that we're not happy with the process and why, and explaining that. Because when you go to consultation and engagement, technically it can be adverse, because there are some that will want something to change and others that don't. And there are some things like the RMA which are out of our control, and some things that are, and we need to explain that very clearly. But I would like to have had some more dialogue on this before here, and I can't support this today because I think I need to understand more of where we're going. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Jake.
Thank you. Look, I'm not going to be supporting this because I don't believe we need to commission expensive research to find out what people think. That's our job as elected members, and every 3 years we get a crash course in exactly what people's views are. And most people don't want to engage. They trust us to get on with the job, and that's right. And when they don't think we're doing a good job, that's ultimately our responsibility. It's not some fault of the engagement team. And I can't help but think that this is an attempt to get a different answer from the public to what they've already told us. I think it's pretty obvious to everyone sitting around this table what it is the public want us to do. And I guess I still have some concerns about where this leaves our community boards, our youth advisory and multicultural committees. I actually am in favour of an idea like a citizens' jury, where we bring together different residents and actually work through the problem and give them some decision-making ability over certain issues. So in my opinion, this paper kind of doesn't really go far enough. It kind of cuts across what we should already be doing anyway and be taking responsibility for.
Thanks, Jake. Sam?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I share a lot of Jake's concerns as well with this, so I won't be supporting it today. Look, I think no one would argue that we shouldn't engage with the community. I mean, we're here because we're elected by them, and I think, as Jake said, we do get elected every 3 years based on our performance. The challenge with this is that people in my ward and other wards across the city fundamentally don't engage because they're out working, trying to pay their rates, and they expect the basics from us to be delivered, whether it's mowing the parks, picking up the rubbish and the likes. And I think, fundamentally, we can only get real change around the council if there's a conscious effort by us to improve that, and I don't think we do as a collective group. But if you take a high-level look at it, fundamentally, it's not a disservice to either of you at all. I think you do remarkable jobs. I think the paper is flawed because it doesn't spell out the commitments we're entering into for some time. And I just think, I have real concerns about not being able to quantify the staff time that would be involved, the estimates around it, and I think if we're going to go into this kind of stuff, we need to have real tangible outcomes. And so I'm quite concerned that we would be walking along a path that actually doesn't deliver what we need at the moment. Our residents just want us to get on and deliver, and I don't think they want us to sit around and talk about this stuff again. So we should just get out there and do it, and I can't support this in the current form today.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this will deliver what we're seeking to achieve. And I look at the middle of 3.3 in the report. Only 37% were satisfied that the council makes decisions in the best interest of the city. So a third of people think we make the right decisions in the interest of the city. So it's not a case of listening more, it's just listening at all. So when people come and speak to us and say that they like something or don't like something or want it, if they overwhelmingly, not like Yanni's 1% overwhelming, but an actual overwhelming, like let's pick a subject like, let's go for an intersection that got 3 times the submissions that the annual plan did, and overwhelmingly was supported, except for people that didn't live in the area. A few of them wrote in, unsurprisingly, to try and scud it, and it still got ignored when overwhelmingly the public asked for something. So when you perform like that as a council, don't expect to have high survey results that give you big glowing ticks when you just ignore the overwhelming majority. And on the ones where it's very close, like the cathedral one that Yanni pointed out, then you have to vote with what you think is right and what you think is in the best interest of the city. But if the city overwhelmingly tells us something, let's start listening. That would be a great step forward as a council.
Thank you. Pauline?
Yep, thank you. I agree with most of the stuff that's been said except about Aaron's intersection. But look, I really think this does sit squarely with the community boards. This is what community boards do. They're the ones at the coalface. They're the ones engaging. They know their communities. And so let's find a way, if we need to sort of glean that data from the boards. If this is what we need, data and reaching into different areas, let's strengthen that and get that happening. And I'd also rather use the existing groups that we have. I mean, look at neighbourhood support, Neighbourly, Multicultural Council, youth groups, youth council, the list goes on. They're all there, they're all set up and ready, and allow them to reach out a bit further if that's the case. And the other thing I'm a little bit concerned about is the timing of this. Although 10 to 15,000 in the greater scheme of things is not, it's a relatively small amount, but however it is still significant in our current environment, where we're putting the microscope over everything just to deliver our core services. And this is a new program with unknown outcomes. We'll never please all the people all the time. And they have every opportunity to engage with us, either individually, through their elected members, face-to-face, online, they can ring us up, and ultimately they can give us a clear message every 3 years, which has been referred to already. And this program, look, it's possibly for the future, but as far as spending an unknown amount, and with so many unknowns about the program, and with unknown outcomes, unknown destination, And especially ending up with a focus group of about 30 people, I'm just not comfortable with that. So I'm not comfortable supporting this today, and I'm also very concerned about launching into more work for our staff when I'm aware of the heavy workload that they're carrying at the moment just to deliver what we're doing now. So I'm just not quite ready to support this today. I think it's a timing thing.
Thank you. Anne?
Yeah, kia ora, and apologies for not being here earlier, but totally endorse what people have said already. I think this is a great signal to our community that we do actually want to be more effective in our engagement and our conversation. I think that's an important signal. I also want to acknowledge the tremendous work that the team here do for us in communicating and getting information out there. However, I do think that we already have really good systems and good processes in place, and staff through our community board, our engagement people, that's their job, is to engage with people and to hear that voice. And a lot of that is built on trust and building relationships. And I think that's what this is key to getting the voices from our community. The Multicultural Advisory Group is a very good example of how we can actually hear from communities that we don't normally hear from. And I think that is really, we need to go from a strengths-based position and build on what we have already there. I think one of the key challenges is the feedback loop. I think we're very good at hearing from people. I think we're good at listening, but I don't know if we're as good at getting back to communicating back to our community what we have heard and why we have made the decisions that we've made from what we've heard. So I would like to be focusing on that. So I'm afraid I won't be supporting this today. I think there's a bit more work to be done.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you. Now, I did have some misgivings about this before the meeting, and I certainly came into this meeting with an open mind. I thank the staff for answers to questions and obviously appreciate that not all of the detailed answers were available because of further work to be done. I do agree that ideally we need to be better engaging with a wider and more representative community. I think it's clear that there's room for improvement here. And at the most basic level, if we keep on doing what we're doing, we're going to keep on getting what we've got. But all of that is why this needs to work. If we're going to do this, it needs to be a step change. It needs to be a way of doing things differently. It needs to achieve something different. Otherwise, it won't work. The problems are reasonably well defined. They're well articulated. They're long-standing. And certainly, Yanni referred to a piece of work in 2012. And many of the issues identified there are the same issues we're identifying today. The group that we're working with, it needs to be balanced, it needs to be diverse, it needs to be genuinely representative across geography, across the whole city, and the peninsula, across all manifestations of diversity, all manifestations of demographic, and it needs to be set up in a way that means it cannot be captured by those who are already engaged and those that we hear from regularly. There needs to be a really strong focus, if this is going to work, on the new and the different, and less on the traditional and the usual. The point was made, and I think it's really important to note, there's a difference between being engaged and contributing in a meaningful way to a public discussion and a person getting the outcome that they want. Understanding the process by which that outcome was reached is important to that as well, but even that understanding doesn't stop people from feeling that they weren't listened to if they don't get the answer that they were looking for. So we need to make sure that we separate that out as a separate issue. That's not about engagement, that's about disappointment, something quite different. My view, and it reflects something that Jake said, is that the average person in the city isn't particularly engaged with council and its work. A lot of people don't feel they need to be engaged or don't even want to be engaged until something upsets them, or possibly more to the point, they hear about something in a way that upsets them, whether that's factual or not, and then, of course, they rise up pretty quickly. So, there are a number of issues around that too. So I do still have some concerns about whether this actually will achieve a solution to the problems that lead to a low level of satisfaction with engagement and decision making as reflected in the resident satisfaction survey, realising that there are things that play into that result other than genuine satisfaction with engagement. But at the same time, I'm not going to vote against something that seeks to address that may well see some improvement, and that's a good faith step in the right direction to better engage with our communities. I think that's something we need to be doing. And I also note the support of senior engagement staff and of management for the recommendations. So I will support this, but I've got some high expectations around the information that will be brought back to us in the workshop to make sure it works.
Thank you. James D.
James D.
D. Ooh, we've got James, then Jimmy, then James. So we've got James. Yep.
Kia ora. Look, I have vacillated over this, and on the basis that, look, we resolved to establish a residents' forum, and as I see it, and I'm acknowledging that staff are just coming back with a response to that. It's just that, and so you're suggesting how we do it. I don't totally agree with how what you're suggesting, but on the basis that I and others supported the establishment of the residents' forum, I'm comfortable with supporting it today, but I think it does need some work. Okay.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay, thank you. If we review the staff report, particularly the 3.6, 3.7, the objective and outcome, review this bullet point. Whether we need another residence forum, 30 to 50 people can achieve this objective outcome. My view, probably not. Existing where so many different group already there. We can have a consultation with them. We need to strengthen the intimate relationship with them. Give them fulfill their responsibility, feedback to us. Now, if we set up another one, even there's a 10K to 15K, but still from the repair, whether it is necessary or not, this is my thought. Like we did have a Christchurch, the youth council. We did have the multicultural advice group and the mandatory, so many group already in there. We did have the existing neighborhood support group, resident association, community board. Particularly community board is fundamental elected member. They should bear more responsibility, can make this happen. Particularly every community board can see their terms of reference, also cover this objective and outcome. So this I thought whether we need to overlap the forum. But the principle is pretty good, because why this principle particular we review, our community outcome, strong sense of community, active participation in civic life, valuing the voices, culture and the ages, including the children's. Most important is particular review 3.3.4. We already understand what the root cause in there. Some of the issue easy, some of the issue contentious issue is impossible to make every person happy. However, through the process we can make it happen. So existing the group we can make it happen. So today quite hard for me to establish another group try to achieve this objective and also this the outcome. So thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. James G.
Thanks. Well, I do think that the work that our comm staff do is excellent, and I've seen staff consistently go over and above with consultations, some that I can remember recently, and I really appreciate that. I don't think that the breakdown's there, but it's often what happens when it gets to the council. So if I'm being brutally honest, I really don't think this proposal will make a scrap of difference. In my view, another group or panel or forum isn't the answer that people are looking for. They consistently tell us what's bothering them, and they consistently tell us what they want. They're struggling to pay their rates, they want us to curb the rate rises, they want us to rein in spending, and they want us to do the basics well. Instead of trying to sell the sizzle better or take residents on a journey, just listen to what they've already said and stop wasting their money. So $10,000 to $15,000 without even factoring the staff time to find out why people don't really like the council. What people don't like about the council is things exactly like this. So I will not be supporting it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jimmy? Yanni, sorry.
Thank you. It's interesting to hear people say doing the same thing over is just going to lead to the same results. Actually, in 2012, we did actually have a watershed moment where we acknowledged that our communication and engagement wasn't working, and we undertook quite significant research to understand why. And what was really interesting about that was actually the point that James Goff makes is actually quite correct. It wasn't actually the communication, it was the decision making that was the issue. And no amount of communication could undo unpopular decisions. And so I actually think in this report, if you go to 3.4, it's actually really clear why people don't engage. Increased cynicism, loss of trust in the process, and they question the transparency of council decision making and say that they feel we're ignoring residents' wishes and there's no point engaging if we don't listen or decisions are predetermined. It then goes on to say we don't provide all the information to engage properly. And I think if you go down to the outcomes, that's really what we should be focused on, where we talk about more people that are being listened to, an increased understanding of decision-making process, and more trust and getting into diverse communities and being involved at the right time. This actually solution that we're proposing doesn't actually meet those outcomes. And if you take, for example, the LTP, previously, in previous terms of council, our LTP, all the workshops were done in public, but we're now doing them in public excluded. We used to have council workshops be done in public unless good justification existed for being in public excluded. They're now all done in public excluded. So we're actually doing things differently now that are leading to, I think, a worse outcome. So I think there's a whole bunch of transparency issues that we need to address. And the problem I have with this report is that it only focuses on one element without actually understanding all those others. And I think really what we need to focus on is actually being responsive to what people are saying when they engage with us, whether it's through formal consultation or whether it's through contacting our call centre. Often, and I think the comment has been made, it's actually about doing the basics in a timely fashion. If you've got a water leak, it's getting it fixed within a reasonable period of time, not having to ring up 4 or 5 times. Just last night, I had someone trying to get replacement bins on the website who'd put in 3 or 4 times on the website, still had no response. I think fixing those small things would actually make a huge difference to how people feel about council, and yet we're still spending time doing this sort of stuff today. And final point is, you know, we were told when this committee council type hybrid structure was set up that we wouldn't have major things just coming to us without an ability to workshop them first. But here we are today having a request for something new without the ability to discuss it as elected members before the final decision's made. And that was another thing that I think people really appreciated about the committee structure.
Time's up.
Was the point of having the ability to think about something first before the final decision was made, which we're not getting to do today. So I think this needs more work and I won't be supporting it.
Thanks. Mike?
I think it's pretty obvious what's going to happen with this vote, but it's actually really disappointing to hear some of the views around this council table at the moment. It seems to be quite an anti-community, anti-people stance, and while that's not surprising from a number of the councillors here, it is actually surprising from a few of them who actually, in the affiliation, has people in it, and clearly you're not actually going towards...
We'll see how many people vote for you next time around.
What I find interesting,
Enough, please.
What I find interesting was at the annual plan, you know, this was a unanimous decision to actually look at doing a residents panel.
That would be a no, Mike. Half us
No, excuse me. Stop. That's factually correct at the time that this was voted on. It's my ruling as chair.
We oppose the annual plan.
That's right, but not this resolution. Go.
Can I get my time started again, please? As I said, at the annual plan, it was a unanimous decision that this council was going to do a residents forum. Unanimous. We know that the cost of this is going to be very, very minimal. At the same annual plan, we made a decision based on resident surveys, similar to what we're doing now, to put another $4.5 million into roading. Yet, you know, I just don't get this council where we're at. You know, what we're doing now is we're actually making a decision based on what people fed in to the annual plan. So it wasn't just the resident survey, it was also the annual plan, where they clearly said, you know, we want to do some type of residents forum. This hasn't just been made up. This has actually come from the people of Christchurch, and we're trying to listen to them. And that's why during the annual plan we all agreed to do this. And yet you come to this meeting and suddenly you have some type of fear. And I'm not too sure what this fear is based on. We know that there are some people within the communities that don't engage with council. There is a clear disconnect between council decision making and public participation. Yet you're too scared to find out what it is. I don't get that. This is a low cost, low risk initiative. It is one approach. It is not the only approach. This is absolutely embarrassing from this council that values community, that values the opinions of people, that won't actually look at another way of trying to get a bit more information from people. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's absolutely disgusting. I'll be supporting what is up there. It is the right approach and is what we should be doing.
Anyone else? No? Okay. I get 5. Aidan, I get 5. Yeah. In our residents' general satisfaction survey, 3 things really stand out for improvement: roads, water and engagement. We're spending a lot of time and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to improve both our water supply to fix the pipes and remove chlorine, and we've substantially increased spending on the road smoothing program and road renewals as part of our annual plan. The work in this report starts to address the third area: how our residents feel about their ability to engage with council, influence the decisions being made, and trust our decision-making processes. Only 26% felt that they could influence the decisions, and the same number were satisfied with their ability to participate in and contribute to the council decision-making. Those people who have been referred to today, the people who keep telling us what they like and don't like, yes, they feel dissatisfied, but they are people who are part of that 26 who are already engaged. It's really poor for our democracy, and we need to work smarter to enable more residents to feel like we are their council. Since I've been elected, I've seen the impact that public submissions and deputations do have on our decision making. We make a lot of changes based on them, and I'd love for more people to do the same. It's clear that residents feel disconnected from their council. We've known this for a while and have tried various methods of consultation at different times as solutions. But we've never really properly identified the problem that we're trying to solve. This work will hopefully identify why residents feel the way they do and provide us with recommendations from our community on a way forward. We are not the experts around the table here, and yet time after time as councillors we have said engage this way, engage that way, and yet we are not the experts, our communities are. And I cannot simply see a single reason why we wouldn't ask a representative group from our community to tell us how they would like to be engaged. We also had many submissions during the annual plan process where people asked us to engage with them better in the long-term plan. And we know that's coming at us really soon. And so getting this work underway now is important if we were able to fulfil that need. It is easy to fix roads and pipes, but it's harder to rebuild a relationship and trust, though just as important as it speaks to how people view their council and how they view their city. This is not a silver bullet, but it's a genuine attempt to rebuild the trust in council and people's engagement with us. It is uncomfortable to ask questions when you don't know the answers and to be open to answers that you may not like, but it is crucial if we are to change and to improve. We have heard from staff today that they will be able to use this work, this small amount of time and money, to engage better, and we have heard from our community that they want us to do the same. Not only will we be able to engage better, but we'll be able to engage smarter with our communities and make sure the stuff that we do pay for in the future, the tens of thousands of dollars that will be spent in the long-term plan, will be money well spent when it comes to engagement. It is disappointing that those who have said that they want us to listen to our communities, who voted in favour of us asking what the barriers are in the annual plan, do not now want to hear from their communities on how they want to engage with us. We are not the engagement experts, our communities are. And so today it is looking like we're going to embed community dissatisfaction with council by telling them in the annual plan that we're going to listen to them, and today deciding not to. And with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against?
No.
Division, please.
Councillor Keown?
No.
Councillor McFarlane?
No.
Councillor McDonald?
No.
Councillor Davidson? Councillor Galloway?
No.
Councillor Scandrett?
No.
Councillor Chu?
No.
Councillor Coker?
Aye.
Councillor Cotton?
No.
Councillor Chin?
No.
Councillor Templeton?
Aye.
Councillor Turner?
Yes.
Councillor Johansson?
No.
Councillor Daniels?
Aye.
Councillor Goff?
No.
Five in favour and 10 against.
There you go. I declare that lost. Right. So moving on to the next one. We've got. Oh, so we will have a 10 minutes break. It's half past 11. We do need to note. So that's the vote was on whether we endorse the approach. So we still have the annual plan resolution, and so we now need to work out what comes next. So we'll have a workshop really soon. We'll try and fit that in and see what we do with the annual plan resolution. So it's the approach this particular time that hasn't been endorsed. Okay? So we will now take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
We were prepared with some points, but anyway, that's fine. But that might be useful.
And this might not be the right place to ask it, but I am interested that if there are, for example, at our way at Hallswell, there are old parts of Hallswell where there are derelict and vacant spaces. Hallswell doesn't fit into any of the definitions of this or the master plans or anything like that. So we're kind of, but it has been 10 years, and there are some need. Where would Hallswell go to get some funding for something if they wanted to do a project like this? Because we don't fit that, and that may not be the right time to ask a question, but I am interested.
The direction of this funding is driven by what you have made as you have signalled as your priorities, and this is not. So if you want, I think the response is if council want to change your metropolitan priorities to do something differently, then.
I don't think that's what Anne's asking. And if you'd like to find a space, if you've got a project that you'd like doing, we can find the right place for that. It's probably not
That's
on
probably
the topic
answer
though.
of the question. Because at the moment there are parts of the city that don't fit into any of this criteria but still have a need for this kind of project, and I'm just wondering how we address that.
So it's probably useful to we could take your query offline and
feedback
with Brindy, because there's probably some tools that we could use.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Tim?
I guess following on from Anne, when we're looking at enlivened places and greening the rubble, etc., they have really been concentrating in the central city, which was our directive. So I think to start talking to our communities, because part of the previous conversation about the poor
Can we just check, though, this is about the rates incentive? Rather than what goes on them afterwards?
No, but I'm just saying that I think there would be a good discussion offline to have about our communities.
We've just redone the grant funding agreements with those groups, and we are looking to recognise non-central city projects, but it's a really fine balance because you signalled a priority for the central city, so it's just trying to create the right signals in those agreements.
Yeah. Okay. So anything on the actual rates incentive and how that's divvied up? Any questions? No. So it's been moved and seconded. Any debate? James, sorry.
No, you're right. The only thing I want to say to this is, trust me when I say this, that the market will dictate whether or not a site is developed or a space is let. So you're going to have a vacancy either way. The question really is do you think it's worthwhile for the council to help make that gap or that vacancy attractive, safe and interesting? So in its simplest terms, if you like plenty of for lease signs and an unsafe, dirty gravel pit, then don't support the recommendations. Or if you think it's a good outcome to support having tidy, safe, activated spaces for people, that's also delivered within existing budgets, then you do support it. So most certainly I think it's a no-brainer. Support the recommendations.
Thank you. Anyone else? No, in that case I'll put the motion. All in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay. And now we move to the resolution to exclude the public for the 2 PX papers that we have today. Do I have a mover for that? Sam? A seconder? Jimmy? All those in favour? Aye. Any against? Thank you very much. We'll just wait for a minute.